And there's two things I'm going to share today. The first one's called the dig in 3 method. Yo, 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 yo! Sales Centers, what's happening? It's Wednesday. I'm excited to be here with you today. I have a doozy of a question coming at you for today's high ticket tune-up. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. It's a great day. I hope you're having a wonderfully successful sales and prospecting week. I hope you've closed at least one deal so far this week, because that's what it's all about, folks. Helping other people make impact in their worlds with their thing using your service or product. All right. Let's dive into the question, shall we? All right, today's question comes from Tori B. Tori B says this. She says, Sean, after a lot of my sales calls, prospects tell me they will get back to me and I never hear from them again. How can I protect myself when selling? How can I protect myself with this from when I'm selling, right? So great question here. And basically breaking down this question, what it sounds like, Tori, is that you've gotten through kind of a good conversation and you've gotten towards the end, and then literally you've probably shared a boatload about your product or service. I would assume that's kind of where you got to. And then the prospect might be feeling a lot of different things. Could be overwhelmed, could be, the objections in their head. It could be a bunch of different things. And this is all predicated, what I'm about to share with you is all predicated on making sure that the person that you're speaking with is you have disqualified or qualified them correctly. You know that you can actually create a result for them, because if you get to this place and you know you can't serve that person, don't sell them. Rather refer them to someone who can sell their problem, or put them in touch with somebody else in your network. Send them a referral, do something. But literally, like, what it comes down to is if you can't solve their problem, as you discover this through a selling conversation, do not sell anything to them, right? Like that's the rules. But let's say, all that aside, we've established, the good bond. We've gone through the process. We understand that, yes, we can help this person. And then we dump a whole bunch of stuff about what we can help them with and how it works. And then they say, oh man, this is a lot of information, Sean. Thank you so much. I'll get back to you, right? And then you try to get in touch with them a couple of days later and they're gone. So if this happens, Tori, there's two things that I'm going to share with you. The first one is this. So this is a think it over style problem that you're running into. Happens all the time than most salespeople would like, I'm sure. But when it does happen, there's two things I'm going to share today. The first one's called the dig in 3 method, or the dig in method. And this is when you hear that response. So let me go back to the question. When you hear the response that says, hey, Sean, you've given me a lot to think about. I'd like to, kind of adjust some of this stuff and I'll get back to you. As soon as they've said that part to you, the response needs to be dig right in with 3 different things, right? It's typically people, product, or company are the 3 that majority of people start with. This is what it sounds like. When you're hearing this, this is how you use the dig in 3. Tori, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, you totally should think something like this over. It's a big decision for you to make. But just let me ask before we in the call here, when people think it over, I always wonder, how do they think it over? Do they go home and kind of just sit there on the couch and think through things, or because most people don't go out in the backyard and sit on a rock and literally think it over, right? So if you're going to think this over, and I totally think that you should, let me ask you just really quickly, could it be the service? Is the service the thing that you're going to think over the most? Or maybe it's my company, the credibility, or, could it be me? And then you just shut your mouth. So again, you heard kind of how I did that, right? So I said, is it the product or service that might be the thing you want to think over? Is it because my company doesn't have credibility? Is it me? Is it me? Right? And all of a sudden, now you've placed all of the pressure back on your prospect, and your prospect's going to be like, well, it's definitely not you, because I like speaking with you, typically is the response. Your company seems legit and fine. You've obviously had these, success and results and from other people. Yeah, it's kind of the thing that we're talking about here. Oh my gosh, could you tell me more? And then we drop right back into those magic 8 questions that we share. I shared on another one of these, could you tell me more about that? Be a little more specific. How long has that been going on? What have you tried to do to fix that? And you could dive back into that pain point for them. And literally now you've reopened the conversation after you've basically gotten a no. So when I hear a think it over, it's typically kind of the first no. And I always listen for that in my calls, because when I know that I hear that part, I know that, okay, cool. They've thought this through fairly decently. And they're at this place now where they're like, Well, I still have this objection in my head because that's all it is. There's like one or maybe two big things that are going on in their mind. And if you give them what we call the Chinese menu, again, is it the product or service? Is it my company? Like, is that the thing that you want to think over? Or is it me? Right. And it's again, that dig in three method where you and that's what I use. I mean, you can use different things in those three buckets, but literally when you give the prospect that choice and then they can say, oh, well, it's not you. Okay, good. So now guess what? They've just anchored that they do want to work with you in some form or capacity in their brain, which is great. Secondly, no, it's not your company. You've already gotten big results. They just anchored that into their brain as well. Great. That's a good move on your part. And then thirdly, yeah, it's the service, but it's not really the service. It's kind of like objection will come out. And that's when you dig deep. And then now you can have a true selling conversation to say, oh, well, if we could just jump over that speed bump, would that solve the issue? Like, is this something you think you can do? Yeah, totally. Boom, close the deal, right? That's one of the ways when you use the dig in three, a couple of things happen. Number one, you smoke out the objection. Number two, you actually find out if this prospect is like a really true fit. And then number three, now you can either usually close that deal and get them going in the right direction, or we do the next technique, which is the second part of this is called setting a clear future. This literally changed my life. It increased my close ratios by 60 some percent. I think it was like 63.5% or something crazy like that. When I started implementing this technique, here's how it works. Again, we've now established, the dig in three method that I just shared with you, and they've identified that it's the service that I'm offering them. And there's this one kind of big objection that has come out. And I realized during part of the call now, like, I can't make this close. I'm not even going to attempt to do it. So what do I do next? Well, the next move is to say, okay, listen, like that is a big problem, possibly a deal breaker here. I totally respect that. I think you do need to think this over. It's a legit thing that you got to do, but let's do this. See, because most people will stop right there and be like, hey, get back to me when you thought it over, or in some form of capacity like that. But the true sales professional or the sales ascender would do something like this. They take it one little step further and set that clear future. And they give their prospect one little piece of, we call them mission of the weeks or a little homework to do. And then we set the next time that we're going to speak with them. So very, very critically, again, we went through the dig in three method. We've established that it's the service. It's not me and it's not my company, but it's the service. And the reason it's not really the service, but it's because they have this other thing, that the objection that they have in their head of why the service doesn't fit for them. And you literally actually are having the conversation about that objection. You've gotten to a place where you're like, okay, this needs to be thought over. You can't, it's just insurmountable in that call. So the clear future comes in and say, great. So I totally agree with you. This is definitely something you need to think over. Here's what I like to do. I think the biggest next step, let's agree on what the biggest next step is that you can take here. Coach them through getting over that objection. I think you could do this. And like, in my opinion, I think it'd probably take a couple of days. Would you agree with that? Yes. Okay. Now you've just agreed that that's probably the right next step for them to take to get over the objection for themselves. Right? You're not solving their problems. You're just giving them some guidance on how to solve their problems. And you say, so if that takes a couple of days, let's set up another time to talk, because I want to understand how the part of what you're just going to do is going to affect things. And also, if it does make sense at that point to engage with our stuff, we can figure that out. Does that sound okay? Yes. Great. Get out your calendar. And at that point, you now say, you talk 2-3 days. Let's go on Friday or next Monday. And all of a sudden now you have a booked appointment again. For the second time, you've given your prospect a little piece of homework, and doing the dig in three method, you've established that you're going to be the right fit for them. They're not mad at your company. They're not even mad at your service, but rather it was just an objection that you smoked out by using that dig in three. Then you've given them a little bit of direction on, here's the next step that you need to use to get over that objection for yourself. And so you can make this decision. And then I want to know how that's affected like what we've talked about in your world. And like, actually, that's a big problem you got to solve, and get out your calendar. And then you set the next time that you're going to speak. And when you do those two things, and so you can either do one of two. Again, if you do the dig in three method, sometimes that leads to a close. Sometimes it doesn't. Just depends. And that's the fun part of sales. That's the work of sales, is like when you know the framework and you throw the framework, it doesn't even have to be that good. And they'll be like, yeah, no, this is the thing. And you're like, great, let's talk about it. Tell me more about that. How long has it been a problem? What have you tried to do to fix it? Oh my God, you've tried all these things. How much does that cost you? How do you feel about this? You still want to solve it, clearly. Yes, totally. Those are those magic 8 questions. I say them almost all the time in every call that I ever have. I use them all the time. Those 8 questions are a tool that you can move around in your sales process, which is amazing. And now we've truly understood the objection. And then literally we said, okay, look, like that is something that we can get over today. And then you can make that close. So if it's a dig in 3, it'll either lead to a close or it lead to a place where we understand what the true objection is, give them a little bit of guidance on how to get over that, and then set the clear future. You can do either one or you can do both. I always encourage to do both. Why? Because when you do both, your closes will go through the roof and you'll be able to impact more and more people. I hope this one was helpful. Again, if it's valuable to you, please smash that love button, hit that thumbs up or whatever it is, and share this to somebody that might need this one, right? If you know any other people that are struggling with closing a lot of deals, this might be a valuable one. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more and working closer with me and our team here at the Sales Ascenders, come on over to our Facebook group if you're not already a part of it. Get yourself an invite. And we're pretty selective on who we do review every single profile that comes into our Inner Circle Facebook group. But again, it's just facebookgroups.com or facebook.com/groups/Sales Ascenders Inner Circle. I'll take you right to our group. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday. I hope this high ticket tune-up helped you. I know it helped me when I first learned it, so maybe it'll give you a little bit of gas when you get into that part of the call. And Tori, again, that should answer your question. That is how you protect yourself when selling and a think it over comes up. With that said, guys, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.